And although you kind of know that this might happen, you don't really think about it very much.
The meeting was supposed to last 10 minutes. Instead, Princess Anne placed a sealed commercial proposal in the center of the table and exposed a plan that threatened to turn one of the monarchy's most recognizable identities into a private global enterprise. Meghan had attempted to secure exclusive commercial control over the Sussex brand. But before the paperwork could move any further, the Princess Royal had discovered it, and she was prepared to confront everyone involved. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Anne had obtained a proposal that reached beyond a new company. It described plans to use the Sussex identity across entertainment, lifestyle products, speaking engagements, charitable campaigns, and licensing agreements. The Sussex designation was a royal title, an identity granted by the crown rather than created or owned. That distinction mattered because the name drew its commercial value from the monarchy, while the enterprise would operate beyond palace control. Alone in a sitting room, Anne read the final page twice. Her expression hardened at the phrase, "permanent global brand ownership." She removed her glasses, closed the file, and set both down calmly. Her anger was not loud, it was colder. Meghan was not protecting a company name. She was attempting to place a royal identity inside a commercial structure that could survive beyond palace supervision. Charles expected another argument about appearances, titles, or family loyalties when his sister entered. Then Anne opened the file and pointed to the clause granting exclusive commercial control. The king lowered himself into a chair and remained silent. A constitutional threat, a danger to the rules and authority surrounding the crown, could begin with a contract if that agreement turned royal status into private property. Anne had already acted. She had instructed a legal advisor to trace every application, draft agreement, proposed partnership, and licensing route connected to the Sussex identity. Meghan's plan was no longer hidden. The palace would soon discover whether companies, investors, or partners had entered the project. A handwritten note made the situation darker. Someone wanted the structure completed before the palace introduced stricter rules governing royal titles in business. Time was running out. Anne pushed the proposal toward Charles. "This is not about whether they earn money," she said. "It is about whether the crown can be converted into property." He stared at the signature page but did not touch it. One terrifying question remained. How far had Meghan progressed before Anne found the file? To answer it, the palace would have to confront the ambitions, old wounds, and divided loyalties hidden behind the Sussex name. Behind the contracts and legal language stood four people, bound together by blood, resentment, duty, and unfinished history. Meghan saw the Sussex identity as something she and Harry had built through sacrifice. Anne saw it as something temporarily entrusted by the crown. Harry was trapped between those beliefs, while Charles faced the painful possibility that protecting his son's title might now require limiting his son's freedom. Meghan believed the Sussex name had grown far beyond its original royal purpose. Years of interviews, productions, public appearances, criticism, and controversy had made it part of the life she and Harry created after leaving senior royal duties. To her, the name carried survival. It represented the moment they walked away, the pressure they endured, and the independence they were still trying to protect. Anne saw something entirely different. The Princess Royal had spent decades defending the line between royal service and personal celebrity. A royal title was not a possession. It was an identity granted by the crown and held under responsibilities larger than any one person. In her mind, turning Sussex into a permanent commercial asset would not protect the family. It would change the meaning of the title itself. Harry understood that danger the moment the warning reached him. The call was brief. A trusted contact told him Anne had obtained the commercial proposal and had already asked legal advisors to examine it. The Duke ended the conversation, walked away, and ignored Meghan's immediate questions. His aunt did not move carelessly. She did not create conflict for attention. If she had stepped forward, then she had evidence. When Harry finally explained, Meghan stared at him in disbelief. Then anger took over. She insisted the project was about independence, financial stability, and a future for Archie and Lilibet that could not be controlled by palace decisions. He heard the fear beneath her certainty, but he also sensed that she had underestimated how personally Anne and Charles would view the plan. Then the second document surfaced. The first proposal described a limited media identity connected to productions and public work. The second went much further, covering products, commercial partnerships, international events, education platforms, and branded experiences. It was not simply protection. It looked like the foundation of a global empire. Harry's unease deepened when he read an email summary showing that several discussions had moved forward without him. He had known the general goal, but not every clause, category, or negotiation. For the first time, the distance between husband and wife was no longer about the palace. It was between them. Harry asked whether Meghan truly intended to place the Sussex name on consumer products without formal consent. She gripped the edge of the kitchen counter and said she was securing what others might take away. But it was never ours to own, he answered quietly. That question did not end with the proposal. It led Harry back to the moment Meghan first became convinced the palace was preparing to strip the Sussex identity of its power. That fear had begun during one tightly controlled ceremony, when a single sentence turned suspicion into determination. Months before Anne opened the file, a carefully arranged royal ceremony had produced a moment almost no one understood at the time. Meghan was not present, yet one sentence spoken inside a private reception reached her within hours. It suggested that the palace was preparing to redefine how royal titles could be used outside official duty. For Anne, it was routine protection. For Meghan, it became a warning and the point of no return. The remark came after a Commonwealth service at St. James's Palace, during a private reception attended by senior household officials and carefully selected guests. The Commonwealth service was a formal royal gathering, celebrating the nations linked through the Commonwealth, but the conversation that followed had nothing ceremonial about it. Anne spoke plainly about the growing need to separate royal titles from private commercial ventures. No title created by the crown should ever become a privately owned trading identity, she said. Anne meant the words as a general principle. She was protecting the idea that royal status belonged to service, not ownership. But one guest heard only part of the exchange and sent a brief summary to a contact connected with the Sussex team. By the time the message reached Meghan, the context had vanished. What remained sounded targeted, deliberate, and deeply personal. Meghan read the message alone. Her first reaction was not anger. It was fear. She believed the palace was preparing to weaken the final royal identity she and Harry still carried. The Sussex name was more than recognition to her. It linked Archie and Lilibet to a family history that distance, conflict, and public rejection had already placed under strain. If new restrictions arrived, she feared their children could lose the last visible connection to that heritage. Harry urged patience when she showed him the message. The Duke suggested contacting Charles privately and asking what Anne had meant. Meghan refused. She believed requesting clarification would alert the palace and give officials time to close every possible route before they could protect themselves. Within days, a private legal advisor received a careful question. Could a royal designation be protected as an international commercial mark without directly challenging the crown? The answer was complicated. Full ownership would be difficult, but control through companies, licensing agreements, and narrowly defined business categories might still be possible. Weeks later, Anne received a monitoring report noting repeated legal searches connected to commercial protection for Sussex. She circled the entry and requested monthly updates. The Princess Royal did not yet know who had authorized the inquiries, but suspicion had already taken root. Meghan opened a fresh notebook and wrote, "Secure the future." Beneath it, she listed media, retail, charitable, and educational ventures. Harry watched from the doorway. He did not stop her, but he did not move closer. By the time Anne received the complete proposal, defensive preparation had become something far larger. The file turned old suspicion into an immediate crisis, and she now intended to confront Meghan without advisors, public statements, or diplomatic escape routes. There were no cameras, no press secretaries, and no carefully prepared statements when Princess Anne finally faced Meghan. The door closed behind them, leaving two women with radically different ideas of duty staring across a narrow table. One believed she was defending her family's future. The other believed she was preventing the crown from being sold piece by piece. Neither intended to retreat, and Harry's absence made every word more dangerous. Anne had chosen a neutral residence rather than a royal palace. She wanted no ceremonial advantage, and no claim that Meghan had been dragged before the institution. Only one copy of the commercial proposal rested between them, but its weight filled the room. The Princess Royal spoke first. She made it clear that the argument was not about Meghan earning money, creating companies, producing entertainment, or supporting causes. The problem was exclusive commercial control over an identity whose value came from a title created by the monarchy. A royal title, she explained, was a designation granted by the crown, not a private asset that could be owned forever. Meghan rejected that distinction immediately. She said she and Harry had carried the Sussex identity through years of criticism, lost security, public humiliation, and relentless scrutiny. The palace had watched that name draw attention across the world, she argued, and it could not benefit from their visibility while denying them the right to build stability from it. Anne did not raise her voice. That restraint made her challenge sharper. Is this truly about protecting Archie and Lilibet, she asked, or about making certain every future project keeps a permanent royal connection? Meghan's expression tightened. She accused Anne of treating her children's place in the family as something conditional, a privilege that could be restricted whenever the palace felt threatened. The pain beneath her anger was unmistakable, but the princess did not retreat. Instead, Anne opened a second folder. The expanded proposal covered international merchandise, hospitality, education platforms, live events, endorsements, and branded experiences. Meghan had expected her to possess only the narrower media document. For the first time, her certainty faltered. She admitted outside commercial advisors had widened the plan. Yet she refused to abandon it completely. A serious brand, she argued, had to be protected across categories it might never use, or someone else could claim them first. Anne placed one finger on the phrase, exclusive and permanent commercial control. Permanent against whom? Meghan held her gaze. Against anyone who believes they can erase us. That answer changed the confrontation. Anne understood that profit was only part of the battle. Fear was driving the rest. Before leaving, she warned that neither woman would make the final decision. The legal authority rested elsewhere, and the man holding it was already preparing his response. The emotional wound had been exposed. Now the fate of the Sussex name would pass to Charles, where family loyalty and royal power could no longer be separated. Charles had spent years trying to preserve a relationship with his younger son without weakening the rules surrounding the monarchy. Now the Sussex proposal forced those two goals into direct conflict. A signature could stop the project, but it might also confirm every accusation Harry and Meghan had made about royal control. As the king studied the legal recommendation, William entered the room carrying a warning that made the decision even more painful. Charles had already been told where the legal boundary stood. Meghan could not simply take ownership of a ducal title, a royal rank linked to a territory, and granted by the crown. Yet advisors warned that companies built around the Sussex identity could still create confusion, suggest official approval, and place growing pressure on the monarchy if the structure expanded without challenge. The proposed response was severe but precise. Royal titles and territorial designations could not be presented as privately controlled commercial assets. Harry and Meghan could continue running personal companies, producing media, and earning independently, but every venture would need a clear separation between private business and royal identity. Charles read the enforcement paragraph twice. His hand stopped above the signature line. The king remembered conversations in which Harry had accused the family of choosing the institution over him. Another restriction would feel like another rejection. He rubbed his forehead, pushed the document away, and stared at the space where his name was expected to go. Protecting the crown had never felt less like victory. William understood the hesitation, but he refused to let it become paralysis. The prince warned that waiting would make the confrontation more damaging. The monarchy could not describe titles as symbols of service while allowing one to become the foundation of an international commercial portfolio. If the palace stayed silent now, every future objection would look selective and personal. Then Anne's review produced a new danger. Preparations were already advancing for a public venture whose launch materials placed the Sussex name at the center. Once announced, the project could attract partners, contracts, and public expectations that would be far harder to reverse. William then admitted he had called Harry before entering the room. His brother had not defended every clause. Instead, the Duke had asked whether withdrawing the proposal would prevent broader restrictions on the title. William could not give that assurance. The question revealed that Harry was no longer certain he understood the project he was being asked to defend. Charles lifted the pen, held it for a moment, then set it down again. William remained silent. Anne finally spoke. Refusing to decide is still a decision. Every day strengthens the claim. The monarch drew the directive toward him and signed. Within hours, that boundary reached Meghan and Harry's home in a letter neither could misunderstand. Her reaction would now decide whether the project ended quietly, or whether the Sussexes would take their battle against the crown into public view. The letter did not remove a title, cancel a marriage, or erase a family connection. Yet when Meghan finished reading it, she understood that the commercial future she had imagined was slipping away. Partnerships paused. Advisors stopped returning calls with the same confidence. Harry watched the consequences spread across the table between them, realizing that the Sussex name had become the very thing dividing their household. Meghan reached the final paragraph and slowly lowered the pages. The palace had formally rejected any attempt to establish exclusive commercial ownership over the Sussex designation. The directive ordered a clear separation between the royal title and private business branding, and it warned that no company, partner, or public campaign could imply authorization from the crown. The consequences arrived almost immediately. A planned licensing negotiation was suspended. A media partner demanded revised language, removing every suggestion of permanent brand control. Commercial advisors who had once spoken about expansion now discussed alternative identities that would not depend so heavily on the ducal designation, a title granted by the monarch and connected to royal status rather than private ownership. Meghan looked more wounded than furious. She said the palace had waited until they built something valuable before changing the rules around them. To her, the timing felt deliberate. Every step toward independence seemed to be followed by another boundary, another warning, another reminder that the family could still reach into their future. Harry refused to place all the blame on Anne. The Duke said his aunt had exposed the plan, but the wording inside the proposal had forced Charles and William to act. Then he asked the question Meghan had been avoiding. Why had he never been shown the expanded categories covering products, hospitality, education, and international events? She answered that she had been protecting him from negotiations he never wanted to understand. Harry heard the accusation beneath those words. He had withdrawn from the details, but she had used that distance to make decisions carrying his name. Then, an advisor proposed retaliation. Selected sections of the palace letter could be leaked to make the monarchy appear determined to interfere with their financial independence. Meghan considered it. Public pressure might force Charles to soften the directive before partners abandoned the project completely. Harry stopped her. He said using the title commercially and then attacking the king for regulating it would make reconciliation impossible. For the first time, Meghan found herself isolated from the person she expected to defend her without hesitation. She gathered the proposal, pulled out the page containing the widest product categories, and tore it in half. Harry thought the plan was over. "We rebuild it without giving them anything to control," she said. The fight was not ending. It was changing. Yet that night, Harry called Anne not to accuse her, but to ask whether one final compromise still existed. The strategy had fractured and the marriage had strained. But one unguarded conversation between nephew and aunt was about to shift the story away from open confrontation. Harry had spent years avoiding conversations in which duty was used to silence pain. Yet when he called Anne, there were no lawyers beside him, no advisors shaping his words, and no Meghan in the room. There was only a nephew speaking to the aunt, who had stopped his family's most ambitious project. What began as a demand for compromise slowly became something neither expected, an honest admission of fear. Harry asked for one thing before they began. No palace record, no staff listening, no message passed through Charles. Anne agreed, but she set her own condition. Neither of them would quote the conversation in public or later use it as a weapon. For once, the discussion would belong only to them. The Duke did not defend every clause. Instead, he explained what had driven the proposal. He feared the Sussex title could eventually be restricted, weakened, or separated from Archie and Lilibet. To him, securing the name was not merely a business move. It was an attempt to preserve an identity before the palace could redefine it. Anne listened without interruption, but sympathy did not soften her judgment. The Princess Royal told him that fear could explain secrecy, yet it could not excuse it. The most aggressive provisions had been hidden not only from the crown, but partly from Harry himself. Permanent commercial control would not have protected his children from conflict. It would have handed that conflict to them as an inheritance. Harry finally admitted what he had avoided saying to Meghan. He had stopped examining the business details because every discussion about royal identity reopened old wounds. He had convinced himself that distance would protect him from resentment. Instead, his withdrawal allowed others to make decisions carrying his name, while leaving his wife alone with both ambition and fear. Anne then offered a narrow path forward. Harry and Meghan could continue using the Sussex title in personal and biographical references. Future companies, productions, and commercial ventures, however, would operate under a clearly separate brand. There would be no ownership claim over the royal designation, no licensing of the title itself, and no suggestion that the palace had approved their projects. Then Anne gave him something he had not expected. She said she would oppose the commercial plan, but she would also oppose any attempt to humiliate Archie and Lilibet, or pretend they did not belong to the family. The title could not become property, yet the children's connection to their heritage would not be treated as disposable. Harry asked whether she considered him disloyal. Anne paused. "I think you have spent so long defending yourself that you no longer notice when defense becomes attack." He closed his eyes and said nothing. By morning, Harry had accepted the framework. But the hardest decision remained with Meghan. The compromise offered freedom, peace, and a way forward. But only if she surrendered the very claim she had spent months trying to secure, before the entire world discovered what had happened. The private dispute became public before the compromise could be announced. By sunrise, Britain was no longer debating a legal proposal hidden inside palace files. It was staring at a front page declaring that Princess Anne had blocked Meghan from turning Sussex into a commercial empire. Crowds gathered, broadcasters interrupted their schedules, and every old argument about privilege, independence, race, duty, and family returned with explosive force. The leak reached several newsrooms at once. It contained enough authentic language to prove that the expanded commercial proposal existed, yet it removed every sign that Harry and Anne had already discussed a possible settlement. The public saw only a confrontation. The compromise disappeared, and the conflict looked absolute. Supporters of Anne praised the Princess Royal for defending the monarchy from commercial exploitation. They argued that a title granted by the crown could identify a family, but it could not be transformed into private property. Meghan's defenders saw something far darker. To them, the palace was once again restricting a woman who had left royal service and was trying to control her own professional future. Meghan watched the coverage with the television muted. Commentators debated her motives without understanding the fear that had driven the plan. Anger carried her through the first reports, but exhaustion replaced it when one presenter described Archie and Lilibet as possible extensions of a luxury brand. She turned away. While the project had been meant to secure their future, yet the public now believed her children were part of the product. Anne felt no triumph. Courtiers expected the king's sister to feel vindicated, but she told an aide that the goal had been to prevent commercial confusion, not to destroy Harry's wife in public. She had exposed the proposal because she believed the crown needed protection. She had never wanted Meghan's fear, marriage, or motherhood turned into national entertainment. A direct public battle still remained possible. Meghan's communications team prepared a statement accusing the palace of selective enforcement and interference with financial independence. Releasing it would place her in open conflict with Anne and Charles, and it could destroy the fragile understanding Harry had secured. Then Meghan spoke to her husband. She removed the accusations and approved a shorter statement, confirming that future commercial projects would operate under a separate identity. It was not an apology. It did not praise the palace, but it accepted the central restriction. Outside Buckingham Palace, a crowd gathered beneath umbrellas as sellers raised a newspaper carrying the words, "Anne draws the line." One woman held it toward a television camera and said, "A title can belong to a family, but it cannot become a shop." That sentence captured the public mood. The commercial claim had been withdrawn, and the palace was preparing its final response. Now the real question was not what the rules would be, but what emotional price Anne, Meghan, Harry, and Charles would pay once the headlines faded. The public battle had ended before becoming a war, leaving them to face consequences no newspaper could explain. In the end, there was no dramatic removal of titles and no triumphant return to royal unity. There was something more permanent, a boundary. Meghan abandoned the attempt to secure exclusive commercial control over the Sussex identity. Anne succeeded in protecting the crown, but she did not celebrate. Harry preserved his family's connection to the name, yet accepted that the title could never become private property. Every side surrendered something, and that sacrifice became the final verdict. Meghan formally withdrew the applications and contractual clauses, seeking exclusive control over the Sussex designation. The ducal title, a royal rank granted by the monarch and connected to a specific territory, could still appear in personal and biographical references. Future companies, productions, and commercial ventures, however, would operate under a separate private brand with no claim of ownership over the royal identity. Charles then signed a general framework applying to working and non-working members of the family. The document established one lasting rule: titles could identify individuals, but no royal could turn an identity created by the crown into permanent commercial property. That decision mattered because silence would have encouraged future disputes, while punishment would have made this conflict look personal. Meghan felt the withdrawal as a defeat. The Sussex name carried years of criticism, endurance, ambition, and survival. Letting go meant surrendering something she believed she had helped build. Yet the loss also created an unexpected freedom. By separating her future from the title, she removed the palace's strongest point of influence and gained the opportunity to create something that belonged entirely to her. Harry accepted his own responsibility in a private conversation with his wife. The Duke admitted that avoiding the details had allowed the proposal to expand without challenge. He promised Meghan that he would no longer disappear from difficult decisions, especially when those choices involved the family he had left and the children he was trying to protect. Anne placed the original proposal inside a closed archive file. The Princess Royal preserved it not as evidence against Meghan, but as a record of the moment the monarchy finally defined the difference between identity and ownership. Her victory carried no celebration because she understood how much pain had been required to reach it. Charles rejected demands for title removal, public condemnation, or further punishment. The king accepted the withdrawal as enough and sent Harry a brief personal message. The boundary is settled. The door is not closed. Anne stood beside her brother after the final papers were signed. He asked whether the crisis was over. She closed the folder and answered that the commercial dispute had ended, but the family could no longer use rules as substitutes for conversations. The monarch nodded and placed the file inside a locked drawer. Meghan's attempt failed because the Sussex title was never hers, Harry's, Anne's, or even Charles's to sell. It belonged to something larger than individual ambition. Yet the ending proved that protecting the crown did not require erasing those who challenged it. Princess Anne exposed the plan, Meghan surrendered the claim, Harry accepted the boundary, and Charles chose mercy over retaliation, ending the crisis with one unbreakable principle. Royal identity may be carried by a person, but it can never be owned as a product. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.